Are we live? Hey, hi everybody. Welcome to another edition of Winsight Live. We got a great show for you today. I want to start you off before I kick it over to the supermarket guru. A couple of stories we've got live this morning at Winsight Grocery Business. There's a new leader at Ahold Delhaize's meat plant that's coming to Rhode Island. This is a $100 million, 200,000 square foot facility that's going to allow the retailer to take over their supply of or their distribution of meat to stores. That's going to lower their costs and improve their quality. It's kind of a significant kind of, but not big headline making news for Ahold Delhaize. Jen Straley has a great tour of a brand new Whole Foods store in Huntington Beach, which you ought to see. We also have a contributed column from a representative of Crasdale Foods, which is talking about how urban stores, particularly in the New York area, have adjusted to COVID. These are stores that don't have a whole lot in the way of technology, such as self-checkout and some of the other things that have kind of helped other stores. The point being made, however, that service and merchandising still really matter today. Now over to Phil.
So a couple of things that you said, John. First, let me start with Crasdale. So what it appears to me, for some independents like Crasdale, who have not been up to speed in a lot of their stores for a few years, is that COVID-19 may actually accelerate these stores doing better, investing in technology, which they haven't done, redesigning the stores. A lot of their stores, especially in Manhattan, really need a lot of work. So maybe this really accelerates that. Also, when we look at Ahold, what's fascinating to me about this story is the way the meat companies are going is the exact opposite, that they're not building huge plants, that they're saying in order to maximize the supply chain, in order to have better food safety, in order to have more robotics, less human beings, and so on, dotting the landscape in the US with smaller meat processing facilities, is probably the way to go. So here for Ahold to build this, it's interesting to me that, they want to take it back because frankly, this way isn't working for a lot of retailers. No question about that, but why they would do such a large facility versus smaller facilities is interesting to me.
Well, I can speak to that point. Ahold, and it's actually Ahold Retail Business Services, which is their services company that services the Ahold Delhaize brands, is in partnership with Cargill to sort of run this facility. But I think for Ahold, the idea is, they'd outsourced a lot of their distribution, through CNS and through other sources for a long time. This is allowing them to get a better, control over what it is that they sell and a better, eyeball on the quality of things and a closer eye on costs. And again, they invested heavily behind this with the idea that it could supply, Hannaford and, Stop and Shop stores throughout New England. But because it's retail business services, it could also serve other retailers in the area that might need a better meat program. So, part of Kroger, part of Ahold Delhaize is this other services organization that is trying to sort of do the things that they do for other people, and that's a new source of income that doesn't necessarily rely on a particular store. So there's that about the Ahold facility.
Yeah, and also, what they're going to do is they're going to assure their customers of a continuous supply. So you're not going to go into a Stop and Shop and see an empty meat case and freak out. That, by investing in it and running it and owning it with Cargill, they're going to make sure that their stores get supplied first. I saw this story that has me a little upset in Dallas. So, we talk a lot about food deserts. We talk about food deserts often, but what happened in Dallas a couple of years ago is there was an owner of a Save-A-Lot who basically sold the store to the city of Dallas, who gave him $3 million for the Save-A-Lot. They changed the name to Save You More. I think they could have been a little bit more creative. The problem is that the population density around the store is only 1,200 people per mile. So it's a very low density. And now the city is saying, okay, we've got to put another, $2.9 million into this to keep it open, to keep it running. And in fact, the developer's daughter and granddaughter want to keep it open. They actually put up a Fund Me page. They've only raised a little over $2,000, I think, or close to $3,000 on the GoFundMe page. So I guess I have to question, are we looking at food deserts the right way? Certainly when we look at Philadelphia and we look at Jeff Brown, he's been able to put together a model that has worked for ShopRite and for the community. But most of these cities, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Dallas, that have these 14 to 25,000 square foot stores just don't seem to be making it. So what's the solution here?
Food deserts are tricky, and it's been a bone of contention in our industry for a long time. If a store could be successful there, chances are a store probably would already be there.
Exactly.
So I mean, we have that catch-22 that these neighborhoods do need grocery stores. They do need access to healthy food. But a lot of times, for whatever reason, I don't know the policies or politics behind it, stores don't succeed. And some of you might remember better than I do, but I do know that several cities had a few years ago, and some may be even ongoing, they instituted mobile supermarkets where, buses retrofitted into a moving market would kind of go from neighborhood to neighborhood. And maybe that's the solution. Maybe we don't do stand up, stores. We do something more mobile that, if it's on a set schedule or social media, they can say, we're going to be in your neighborhood today. That might be a better solution than a bricks and mortar store.
I would agree with you, because keep in mind, a lot of people who live in food deserts don't have cars. That's one of the issues. The other issue, and I remember this during while I was growing up in Newark, New Jersey, where there were supermarkets. The supermarkets there, including Pathmark and including some ShopRites, really operated like a small town grocer, where basically they had a notebook by the cash register, and John would come in and get $30 worth of groceries, and they would put $30 next to John's name, and then when John got paid, and this is before credit cards, and again, a lot of people in food deserts don't have credit cards. When John got paid, he would go in and he would pay his bill. That doesn't exist in today's food desert environment, and a lot of people just don't have the ready cash or credit cards.
Phil, it's a tricky situation. As you mentioned, I don't know about the idea of writing a credit on a notebook necessarily work in today's market. The other thing that's happened, we're talking on one hand about Ahold Deli, so you've got 2,000 stores, and then you're talking about a small guy running one store in Dallas. And if you look at the Dallas Morning News and you see the photograph of that store, it's a kick, because it was a former Save-A-Lot. And they actually left the same word "save" on the front of the thing in the Save-A-Lot thing, and then wrote "you more" underneath it. It kind of smacks as a kind of a low budget thing, and it was kind of run off. And that they don't have the financial wherewithal that some of their competitors in better, that might operate stores in better neighborhoods have. What we see in places like here in New York, the Fresh program, which is run through the city and is associated. Gives low interest loans and other incentives for retailers to start stores. It seems to work particularly well when you can do a high volume store. Food Bazaar opened in the Bronx, at the Bronx Terminal Market earlier this year, 80,000 square feet, going toe to toe with a BJ's Wholesale Club right beneath it, and gigantic displays, huge stuff. And as we mentioned in that first article we talked about this morning, it's an independent that is really hyper-focused on the needs of the shoppers, ethnic. So it's got the assortment and selection that the shoppers of that neighborhood need. So it's Yeah, it's funny to get, the real estate and off the ground, and make sure you've got enough to pay employees to keep the store stocked and everything. But it's also branding and assortment and
Mhm.
doing everything else that a supermarket in any other town needs to do. Focus hard on their customers and hopefully do so in large enough volumes to make it work.
And also, maybe it's not as big of a store. Maybe that's part of the issue, that, again, we're going these 14,000 to 25,000 square foot stores. Maybe it's going into Brett's domain, and maybe it's a larger convenience store that only has 5,000 square foot. So it's more manageable. So, you can run it with 2 or 3 employees, that you don't have to have that kind of overhead, and you don't have to have, the 12 different sizes of Tide detergent in there. Maybe one size is enough. The other thing that was interesting to me is, Target about a year ago started their Good and Gather line. It's now up to $1 billion in sales. They're phasing out Archer Farms, which I feel horrible for, because I like Archer Farms brand. But now what they've just did is they've now expanded Good and Gather to Good and Gather signature line. So they're getting more upscale with their private label. They've got small batch Italian sauces, gourmet pizzas, specialty sauces, hummus, meatless patties, coffee. They're going to have almost 2,000 products by this fall in Good and Gather. Has Target finally gotten their act together as it relates to food? Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you, Phil. I really liked the Archer Farms, particularly in the deli. I was very loyal to that. I'd make a trip to Target just to buy that. But then when they initially introduced Good and Gather, I tried a number of those products, and I was really pleased with all of the ones that I sampled, and that wasn't even the higher end stuff.
Right.
So I'll have to make a trip back and see what I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as much as everybody loves Archer Farms, everything that I've tried from Good and Gather has been good. And I even recommended it to a friend. I'm like, if you haven't tried this from Target, you need to try it. So I'm hopeful that their new signature line will be just as good.
Yeah.
And as far as the line extensions go, it's sort of similar to what Kroger has done so successfully with Simple Truth. They've got Simple Truth Free From, Simple Truth Organic, Simple Truth Plant-Based now, and they really kind of use this as their major, vehicle to, and Target does everything the way Target would. So it does a food brand the way, Target would do a store. It's a style. There's an element of style to it. There's an element of uniqueness to it, and sort of affordable aspiration to the brand. And this makes sense to be adding to the product. It's obviously off to a great start, so you may as well ride that horse. Wakefern doing the same thing with their new brand called Bowl and Basket, which is kind of similar.
Albertsons, yep.
It's one of these hipster names, something plus something. But yeah, it's emblematic of the great strides that U.S. retailers are making in private label, which has been a long time coming.
And I hope you guys don't mind, but I've invited a special guest for our next story to join me here. And Dr. Fauci, I talked to him this morning, and he said, Phil, there's a story that you got to talk about today. Just you have to talk about it. So, Doc, you stay there in case I have any questions. But Food Lion has a policy that has caused a U.S. veteran from the Marine Corps to quit. And the reason he quit the store is after months and months of wearing not an American flag, but cloth that looked like an American flag as a face mask. They told him he couldn't do it anymore. This town where he is has the largest, Marine base, I think Marine base or Air Force base in the U.S. He's a decorated veteran. His father was a decorated veteran, and he just doesn't see it. What do you guys think as we are finally, seeing more and more people wearing face masks, which is good. Thank you, doctor. I think that, are we now just getting so political? I mean, here in Santa Monica, I see people wearing face masks or scarves that look like the American flag. And I don't think it's disrespectful at all. I think it's respectful.
It's happening in North Carolina. We talked a few weeks ago about a similar controversy in Wise Markets in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania and North Carolina, both pretty interesting states politically as things go. The retailers, are coming at this, I think, in the right sort of area. They want to present a united front. They don't want to, offend too many people. And I think they have a uniform policy for that reason. But yeah, they end up with black guys because everything is so charged up today in these kinds of things. And you kind of get on the wrong side of whether you're patriotic or not today. And that's a tough road to hoe in North Carolina. So the most recent thing I read about this was that they said, well, American flag patterns are okay, but we're still going to be careful on other symbols, not saying necessarily what the other symbols are.
Well, why don't they just give them masks? I look at Kroger. Kroger has given their employees masks that have their logo on it. So you see a Ralph's logo or you see a Kroger. If in fact you've got this policy and if in fact it is controversial, why don't you just have some designer make some kind of mask with your logo on it, Mr. Retailer, and give them to your employees? I think
that's the only solution to this, and I don't understand. I mean, you don't get to choose what apron you're going to wear.
Right.
You have to wear the work apron. So, taking away a fashion statement or personal statement with the mask would just alleviate all of that. I guess they don't want them wearing masks that say things because it's already this really contentious issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's causing all this upset, and then they don't want to add, fuel to the fire with people being offended by what the mask says. So like you said, Phil, just put your store logo on a mask, have a bunch of them printed, and that's part of the uniform now.
Yeah.
I have a related question here. So I was on a road trip over the weekend and I stopped in a few convenience stores, obviously, when filling up on gas, and multiple of them had signs on the front door that said, "We require customers and employees to wear masks inside." Great. Both of those instances, they were not holding up. Not only were many customers not wearing masks, some of the employees weren't even wearing masks, or wearing their masks improperly, like on their chins. Yeah. Still like their noses are exposed. It's so my question for the group is, on the grocery side, have you guys been seeing this at all, where these policies are enforced yet they're not really fully being followed? And how much are they actually being enforced? Do these brands have people in their stores monitoring this, or should they? What do you guys think about this? Because I think they should have people doing that if they're going to enforce one of those policies.
Yeah, the problem is they have requirements, and I think that helps them sort of politically from that point of view. But they're really not going to put their employees in a position to enforce the law, particularly in places that haven't made the masks mandatory in retail stores. So they kind of have to walk this thin line between, being careful and safe for their employees and shoppers, and not running afoul of, liability and legal issues, getting into ugly confrontations with shoppers. And, it's a mess.
But I do think that, to Brett's point, when you have the sign outside, we've got a little convenience store up the block here, independent. It just turned hands probably about a year and a half ago. It's a young guy from the Middle East who owns it now, has this handwritten sign, nobody allowed in without a mask. They put up the plexiglass and so on. And I would say every time I'm in there, he has to yell at a customer to get out. And I give him credit for it. And, you know, I've even said to the customers that there's the sign. There's the sign, you know, why are you the only person who's allowed to come into this store without a mask? What makes you so special? And I give a lot of these independent people credit. However, to John's point, you know, who knows if some wacko, you know, is carrying a gun. And here in Los Angeles, it is mandatory to wear a mask in a grocery store. So, you know, they are reinforcing it. But who knows, with all the nuts that are out there these days, that, you know, he puts himself in harm's way. And to that point, now I will only go in that store when it's light out. I used to go in, you know, at dusk or at night or whatever else as well. Now I won't. So before we get to Jen's good news, I came across this story that there's now more people putting money, VC money, in agri-food. And that's everything from, you know, plant-based meat, technology to improve animal health and so on. And they're all excited because it hit almost $17 billion last year. Then I was looking at another report from Statista, and it's the world's most valuable unicorns, the startups that have the highest valuations. So the least one in this 1 to 10 is DoorDash with $16 billion. So, you know, all this talk about how much money we need for research in agriculture in order to really, you know, save the planet and everything else. So yeah, we've got 17 million, but here's little DoorDash with 16 million. The number one is ByteDance for artificial intelligence with $140 billion. And I'm sorry, Jen, one more story, and then I'll let you give us our good news. There was just a survey that came out that showed that 81% of people, when they go to the presidential polls this year, and I'm looking for when they go to the polls this year, 81% are going to be considering climate change when voting for their president, which I found fascinating. The vast majority of respondents indicated that they're interested in eating foods that decrease the likelihood of forest fires, that helps one's local community, and farmland becomes more resilient to climate change. So maybe we're finally getting through to people, and hopefully this survey is accurate. We might have some good voting on climate change. So with that, Jen, wrap us up with some good news.
Yeah, so my good news is sort of related to that. It is National Organic Harvest Month, September. And in celebration of that, Natural Grocers has partnered with Beyond Pesticides on a Ladybug Love program that aims to raise $100,000 this month with in-store donations and shopper donations, and Natural Grocers is going to give back $1 on every $2 sort of limited edition shopping bag that is sold. And they're going to use that $100,000 hopefully to eliminate pesticides and promote organic produce, which, as you know, Natural Grocers only carries 100% certified organic produce.
And what does it have to do with ladybugs?
Well, ladybugs are good for the environment, and when you stop using pesticides, the ladybugs flourish.
Gotcha. I did not.
And they're cute. Ladybugs are cute.
And ladybugs are cute. I would agree. And Dr. Fauci, do you think ladybugs are cute? Well, of course I do. Of course I do. Thanks for joining us today on Winsight Live. Again, all of our past archives are on CSP, Restaurant Business, Winsight Grocery Business, SupermarketGuru.com. We'll be back here on Thursday. I don't think that Dr. Fauci can join us on Thursday, but we will be back here 9:30 a.m. Pacific and 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Have a great week and be safe and wear a mask.